Hello and welcome to Elite Rounders SolverTALK. Today we are discussing how to play from the small blind in terms of calling. And I think this is something it's kind of tough to believe sometimes, like how wide we are supposed to bat flat pre-flop. But I think that's what I want to point out here, that I think people are missing a lot of these flats from the small blind, even like versus early position open. Of course, it's always good to keep in mind if the villain is playing optimal ranges, are they opening enough hands? If they are way tighter, are they good player? Are they c-betting always? All these questions kind of like matter to our answer as well. If they're more check happy, I think we can realize a bit more equity just flatting from small blind. And if they're opening tighter range, we kind of have to be tighter because like the funny thing is that if somebody is opening tight range, there's not much we can do in terms of like no limit hold'em because if somebody just opens tight range, their hands are so good that they can bet first of all any flop. And what are you trying to make fold on flop if they have really tight range? Basically, like calling becomes only profitable versus tight players who are just terrible boastful players. In a sense, like they will stack off their aces every time, no matter what the stack size. Let's say you are 150 big blinds deep, flop comes 5, 6, 7, and they still stack off this board with aces. So again, if the villain is like this, then the calling becomes very valuable because whenever you hit something, you probably get paid. So these are the best guys to target in sense of like calling wider, but versus any competent villain who's playing tighter range, you are just not going to get their stack when you actually hit something. So it kind of makes like uh, implied odds like waivers as well, and you're playing terrible position, the hardest position to play basically. You're playing very capped range every time. So small blind is very tough position to play. But what I want to today show you is actually what sort of range Monker would flat from small blind versus under the gun open. Remember though that this is optimal ranges, and here our villain would open 18% roughly from the under the gun. And then small blind, what is our small blind strategy here? We can look at it in terms of like Focus Novi here. Focus Novi would call 8%, call 8%, and would 3-bet 8% as well. So, and when we compare this to Monker, we have call 12%, 3-bet 7%. So fairly similar looking numbers, but again, I think it's a bit different because like under the gun is opening 18 percent, and Focus Novi is a bit tighter, I think, if this size, more like 16, 70%. So there's small difference. I think I changed earlier to this player, and then you saw the ranges are very similar. So that's why like there's not huge difference between these softwares really, in a sense of like if you look at them, there is different strategy going. For example, if you look at like Focus Novi calling range here compared to Bunker, so these are the calling hands. As you can see, it's everything from deuces plus to like sevens, pretty much pure call. And here you can see that till nines, Focus Novi is like pure calling. And here Bunker is already 3-betting here, nines plus, way more often, I guess. And tens plus is always 3-bet basically. With tens plus, yeah, pretty much agree with both of them. Like you need to 3-bet ace queen off. So very similar. Ace queen suited needs to be like 3-bet most of the time with Focus Novi, but you can see that Monker prefers playing post flop with ace queen suited, ace jack suited, ace 10 suited. So you can see that a lot of these hands, like kind of like if we 3-bet like ace queen suited, what do we do if villain shoves? It is kind of tricky in a sense. Like I wouldn't even feel that good if villain shoves here. I assume maybe it's a it's just fold. So we could technically 3-bet fold, but like I just see there's like quite a lot of value just calling, keep the worst hands in the range, and just calling with ace queen suited. I don't think you need to take that big variance, but again, I think even 3-bet calling could be here more profitable if the villain is very aggressive. So again, depending on the villain, I think you should make up your play with ace queen suited here. But in terms of calling, you can see like quite a big difference here with Poker Snowy and Monker Solver. Ace ten off is still a call here in both cases, like but quite a lot. I think three bet as well. Yeah, it's going to be pretty often used as a three bet bluff, same as Ace Jack off. So again, these offsuit hands are fairly often three bets. But as you can see, like the hands, King Jack off is still supposed to be played. Mostly as a three bet by Munger and Pokestovi just likes to call. So again, like pretty good general advice would be here would be to call every time, like at least eights to deuces. Basically, that's kind of solid advice. Don't three bet those hands unless again the villain is just crazy. Then maybe you can consider like three bet folding, three bet calling with eights. Like if the villain would be crazy, but that would be probably like if they're opening like 30% or something, maybe then you can probably consider that option, or shoving maybe. But that even that might be actually too crazy. I'm not gonna say more to that, but like definitely you should make some adjustments if they are just opening way too wide. Um, because like in terms of this, I don't know if you actually want to three bet fold some hand like eights. It seems kind of unreasonable, and you don't really have any blockers for the V-line shoving range, so it doesn't seem that good hand to three bet in general unless you're shoving. Then you deny a lot of V-line equity because they just fold a lot of hands, right? So in terms of three betting going on here, you can see that Snowy prefers a lot of, again, the green ones are 100% three bets. So you see that Poker Snowy would prefer like just three betting all these blocker hands, and Snowy just loves these blocker hands for some reason. for Well, it kind of makes sense. Like you block the villain's shove range, so that's why I think. But it is kind of I think I prefer more like the strategy like Monkey Solver used for three betting, but we can discuss that in other video. Now we are focusing on this calling. But I think this is also probably better strategy in terms of like the calling hands. So you call something like King Jack off, and you call like max like King Nine suited from small blind, Queen Nine suited. I think that's better because like if you start flatting a lot of these marginal hands, especially if you're just coming into the game, I think you'll be so confused. This is still probably the hardest position to play small blind, because you're playing very capped range in a lot of spots. So it is kind of nice to have these smaller, kind of like smaller suited combos because like you cover more of the board when you have these. So if the board comes kind of low board, at least you have these. So the villain can just like battle crazy when it comes low board because only thing you can really have is like a set or something. Um, so I do think like here if the board comes low board, if you don't have that, like you don't really have any of these traits, right? Like if it comes low board, if the villain knows you don't have straights, you can only have sets, right? So that those are the strongest hands. So it's kind of easier to battle you off from these mediocre hands and then few very strong hands. But if you have also the straights, two pairs, it's tougher mentally, especially to battle you. But again, in game, it's impossible to say what people have here flatting. They could have, sometimes they can have ace five off, sometimes you see ace five off, sometimes you see queen five suited, like um, sometimes it's hard to picture what people are flatting from small blind, especially when they're a recreational fun player. It's really tough to range them because it could be anything from like, I mean, it could be anything like this, like I think you need to like when you're seeing like if you think he's a fun player, it could be anything like this. Basically, what they're flatting, ace X is kind of often overplayed. Then there could be something like this. But when you're playing fun players, you never know really what they're up to. So you just have to see it. When you see like somebody flatting ace deuce off, you should just probably like bomb versus their like call. If they call small blind, just bomb any flop. I mean, by bombing, just c betting a lot. He will have very hard time continuing enough anyway because there's so many garbage hands. So actually, if you just see somebody calling like ace deuce off, that's just amazing for you probably. So be happy with that, and don't be negative that they sucked out with ace or something versus your kings. Just be happy they called ace deuce off because it's terrible call. they will be losing a lot of money doing that. So don't be upset. But yeah, so I think like this is reasonable, but like again, you need to think about the point of the tournament before calling these sort of hands and calling this wide. I personally would prefer the calling range, what Pokesnovi is doing. When it comes to three betting, we're not focusing on that here, but we can discuss in other video. But like I think definitely like flatting range, don't especially start like I would recommend starting like Pokesnovi, like King 9 suited, Queen 9 suited, Jack 10 suited, 10 9 suited. And then if you want to get a little bit more frisky, just go with the 9 8 suited and 8 7, 7 6, 6 5. Especially if you think the villain's a bit weaker, just go like don't be afraid to go wider. Like if you think the villain is weaker, if they're better, play tighter, right? So just based on the player, just go make your decision. Like if he's a terrible player, opening way too many hands, you can maybe call a bit wider as well, three bet a bit more. But either way, I hope that clears a little bit about the confusion what the flat pre-flop versus under the gun from the small blind. It's not easy decision, and still you should consider also who's in the big blind. If the big blind is very squeeze happy, they will be over bluffing. It's probably a spot you want to more like move your very strong hands in your flatting range and just like kind of three bet. Like you kind of want to trap the big blind instead of like flatting super wide. You probably want to like really narrow the calling range and just use hands you can shove versus the isolo, like isolate or squeeze, whatever you want to call it. I guess isolate would be actually versus limp, right? So if they squeeze, you have like pocket sixes. So if you think he's way out of line, again, if this guy folds, if this happens, he three bets, this guy folds. Now, if you have pocket sixes and you think he's out of line, you can shove these hands, right? Like, so again, if you think he's going to be out of line here, potentially like three betting over whatever 6% he needs to. If he's doing 10%, just shove the sixes. So at least you have hands like, but again, you can easily use like these 8, 7, 6, 5s, 4s, well, even 3s, deuces if you think he's super out of line. So again, it's not really a problem. These small pockets will be very nice for call jamming if villains are out of line. So it is kind of cool play. But yeah, that's about it for the solver talk today. We'll discuss something else next time. I hope you enjoyed the video and talk more.